just wanted to ask some questions and like get some input from you and see what you think, basically.
Cool. Yeah. So today we are going to be talking about everything to do with the Lanternier. Yeah, it's about finding a balance between action adventure and RPG is what you're sort of struggling with here. So if you're a small team, I always say go for the more simple solution. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Polygon Forest. I am indie developer Vin Hill, and I am joined by the other indie developer Christopher Jarvis.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about everything to do with the Lanternier, which is Chris's little side hustle that he's been working on recently.
Yes.
You've been talking about this quite a bit on social media and pushing stuff on TikTok. I've been seeing little bits of updates, but we're gonna talk about that a little bit more in depth today, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. It's because it's new and I've got energy for it. That's why it's on social media. And I'm just trying different things until something either is quick and works or is difficult and works. And then I make a decision as to whether or not to carry on doing it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but I just wanted to show you my updates, what I've been working on. And then I just wanted to ask some questions and like get some input from you and see what you think, basically.
Cool. Yeah. I think that you're sort of extending that to the rest of the community, right? Because like you keep saying online that this is a community driven game. So
I want it to be, but I need to build a community first.
Right, of course. So I guess what I'm trying to say though is if you're watching this and you've got any suggestions, Chris, make sure you go and follow him. Go on to where can people find you? It's at Acrylic Pixels, right?
Yeah, at Acrylic Pixel on Twitter, Acrylic Pixel on YouTube. I have got a Patreon set up. But that's just so that I'm ready for
when the community comes.
Yeah, when the community comes. And it might not be anything that I make money on. It's one place that you can go to. You don't have to pay money or anything. You can follow me on there and see all the stuff in one go, just if you wanted to, and take part in trying to shape up what the game's going to be. Yeah. But it's an action-adventure game akin to things like Death's Door, Legend of Zelda games. It's a 3D isometric game, which might not mean anything unless you're a game developer, but it's where the camera follows from like the clouds. Similar to like Tunic, things like that.
Cool. Have you set up a Discord page yet? Because I think that might be a really good idea for you.
I've got my acrylic pixel.
You should try and filter people into that, because I think like if you are trying to build this community sense of a video game, then maybe like that'd be a good sort of hub for them to come to really discuss like in micro detail about exactly what you're working on with Lanternier.
Yeah, that's true.
Just thought.
So yeah, because I want like things like character design, enemy design, everything, audio, mechanics, everything to be sort of not just what I think is best, but for me to be like the game director. And everyone else to be like the employees, if you like.
Got you. Yeah.
Without having to pay any of you.
Please don't cancel us. Okay. So let's talk about what you've updated, and then we can sort of get into the weeds on any new stuff that you want to talk about. So take a look.
So are we sharing the screen now?
Yep.
So I've got the character set up in Unity. I've got him running around. I've got the lantern just floating next to him because he's not holding on to it yet. It's a robot character at the moment, but it will be not a robot.
Right.
And if you press Control or if you press the left trigger, you'll enter in the lantern mode, and you'll be able to use the lantern to make cool shadows and illuminate things, and it's gonna activate puzzles and things. Still need to figure out how I'm gonna quite activate the puzzles and things. So I've been experimenting with a few different things. And I got rid of the culling on the lantern. Oh yeah, I've been playing with the ragdoll physics of the lantern as well. So if I hit things, then the lantern goes crazy.
Swings a little,
Swings about. Cool. Which I'll need to get rid of because I need to, if I'm aiming the lantern, it needs to work.
Yeah, good point.
But yeah.
There's definitely a middle ground in there, though, right? Like you could probably have it like swing for like half a second, and then it's still like whenever he turns, he's got a little bit of a just to have that human element.
Yeah, or just like when you press shift, then rotation stops on the lantern. Like just code that in,
Yeah, that's true.
Could do that. Keep it snappy. Not sure. I've got the zombie character in. It's going to be testing the combat, and I was going to go for Death Door type combat where you'd have melee enemies, ranged enemies, like flying enemies, maybe like dog enemies, and then have a few bigger like mini bosses dotted around, and then every once in a while have a big boss in like a separate area. And then that led me on.
It's about finding. Sorry to interrupt you though. It's about finding what they call developers of Doom titled it beautifully, and it's something I'd never heard before, but it's something I was aware of, but had never given it a proper name. And they call it combat chess. And this idea of having, you're not just designing the enemies like as individuals, you design them as a chessboard, so they all have individual sort of unique abilities and skills that you have to react to differently. Whenever you encounter a new piece, then you've got to think about it differently. But as soon as you introduce two characters, two enemies with different abilities, then you have to sort of combine those skills, and that's when you get proper flow of combat, like what they call combat chess. And when like certain things come at you from different angles, then you can really sort of play for that. So whenever you're designing characters, make sure you just have that in mind, because that's something which I find is just absolutely
well, it's the reactive micro decisions about how you're going to encounter this thing that you've seen, and then also the macro strategy where you've encountered the enemies before, and so you know what they kind of are going to do, and that combination of the back and forth. And then when there's a different combination of enemies as well, or if they're a different color, do they do anything different, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And also it's going to be a sort of a action adventure game in that you have different abilities that change throughout the game. So one of the ideas was having like white, red, green and blue filters on your lantern, and you'll unlock the different filters as you progress through the game, and so that will change how you do puzzles and combat. I'm hoping.
No, that'd be cool, because you not only have the dance of the combat, how the player's moving around or has to move around, but also like the combination of like the different types of light and stuff like that. And
then also then visually it should change. And I'm guessing it's going to coincide with the environment as well. So I'm guessing it's going to coincide where you visit a different biome of the environment of the game. So maybe like fiery desert, water temple type, level, infamous level. And then
all the Zelda tropes.
All the Zelda tropes, basically, and like lush green forest and things like that. The Zelda tropes take from the best.
Sure, why not?
And then that was going to lead me on to what I wanted to pick your brain about, which was I've got all these different ways that we could go about doing like death and respawning and like taking damage. So we could do the Zelda like hearts, and the more you progress, the more hearts you get. But with Legends is like with Tears of the Kingdom and things, that's from visiting temples and doing environmental puzzles that you unlock the ability to upgrade a heart. Or I could do Death's Door had a really elegant solution where they pick up the seeds throughout the level, but then you've got to visit a pot, and then the pot is kind of a respawn point, so you can either like regain your health from this pot, and then also you respawn back at the pot once you've planted the seed as well. I think that's right, wasn't it? Did you respawn back at the pot? Or at least there was a door near a pot usually. And so with Death's Door they had the whole door system for like ratcheting up progress. So once you'd unlocked a door, you had access back to the shop. And so I've got a few different ways that we could do it. Or you could do like this game below that you turn me on to, where it's really tricky and you've really asset managing and resource heavy gameplay, where you've got to like make things to survive. What sort of thing were you thinking is good, or what would work?
I mean, is
it try it and see, suck it and see what happens?
It's about finding a balance between action adventure and RPG is what you're sort of struggling with here. So if you're a small team, I always say go for the more simple solution. which is less sort of stat heavy stuff anyway.
Like love hearts.
Yeah,
like
I mean, it's less about like specific health bars and all that sort of stuff, but it's more to do with you get hit, you lose a gem off your thing. But in this case, it'll be like light crystals or something, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's something to do with the lantern. For checkpoint system, yeah, I mean, if it like the way that my mind would sort of go in something like this, it would be something very environmentally apt for the game that you're going for. So it would
like
be
a lantern.
like a lantern. Like, yeah, there's the lanterns famously in Bloodborne, which could serve quite well. Like, you might even have a nexus, like sort of hub area that you can return to and level up there and stuff like that. You know, if you even have leveling, right? It could just be, everything could just be based on the lights, and that's it. So you might not even like level up to level 2 and have a bit more combat power. Maybe it's just you keep it simple and it's like, okay, the only thing you upgrade is your
is the lantern.
Is the lantern, that's it. And the lantern holds maybe your health as well. Maybe that's why it's really important. Maybe maybe the lantern is actually your heart inside of the lantern or something, right? And as you level up the lantern, it's actually a part of you. So it might be a cool sort of idea to have that. So, I mean, there might even be a story in there somewhere. Maybe you're cursed to hold your heart in this lantern. You got to keep it with you to protect it or whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting. Incorporates the story beat.
Exactly.
And then also I was thinking about Sands of Time as well. Prince of Persia, where they had like the rewind mechanic. And that helped with like exploration as well, where it gave an emphasis to like I can feel like really powerful and I can go and kill these people because I know that if I get hit I can just rewind it and do it again, and so therefore it's kind of trickery because you just redo it again, it's just a little bit quicker, you're just right there and then, and the rewinding is cool.
Yeah, it's just an instant checkpoint system. That's all it is, really. It's not actually, you're not actually having an ability. It's just allowing you to fail over and over again faster, so you can find the solution, sort of thing. Very fast mentality, right? Which was like Prince of Persia: Sands of Time is still like one of my favorite games ever made. It's still an incredible game. But yeah, it's tough because like it really depends what you want to do with the lantern, right? Like if it is just specifically light based, like where's this time aspect?
It's magic. It's a magical lantern. It's a magical lantern.
But like if that's the case, then you can't just have just light and then just a rewind ability. Now you need more abilities as well. What are those going to be? You know.
Well, I was going to have projectiles coming out of it. So one of the upgrade ideas I had was like if you're using a light as a light beam, it's going to do damage to some lower enemies.
Okay.
And then you can unlock the ability to like shoot a bolt of light, like a light arrow, if you will, out, and that will do more damage. But that's only after you've unlocked it, and then you've got aiming and some sort of infantry where you can't just have infinite light arrows, and then you've got recharging and cooldowns and things.
Why not? You know, like that's a legitimate question as well. It's like, why not have infinite arrows?
Well, yeah, I could, but you just then have to cool down. You just have a cooldown.
Sure. Yeah, it's these are the sorts of things that you'll get into when you're testing combat, right? Because once you get like the first step is just getting the enemy moving and trying to attack you and stuff, and then you getting the player movement to sort of coincide with that dance. So if you're doing a combat system which has got dodging or blocking, parries, melees, stuff like this, like you've got a bunch of different choices that you can make, and if you are doing those things or if you're not doing those things, then how can you sort of counter the combat sort of chess dance with whatever the enemy's doing, sort of thing. And then you've got to like a good thing you could do is just have like once you've figured out the movement of your first enemy guy, which you've got on the screen now, then just give him like all the abilities of the enemies that are due to come, so you're not just remaking character models for the hell of it. Then you can really test all of the combat chess, and then you can just like paint one guy blue, one guy red, one guy pink or whatever, and then just play with it and just sort of see like what the balance is going to be, and then you can start to see if like, okay, do I actually need to cooldown on this thing? Like, can I just like have infinite bullets that doesn't actually kill them? Maybe it only pushes them back or something, and you've got to like lure them to an edge and push them off with your light. So it doesn't matter if it's got a cooldown or not. It's all about the placement at that point, right?
Yeah.
So it's a hard decision to make at this stage, because you don't know what, like, you're trying to come up with a solution before you got the problem.
Yeah.
In a weird way. But yeah, all legitimate ideas either way. Like, you could absolutely have a cooldown. You could have an inventory system if it's required, though, because ultimately, like, players like freedom as much as they can get it. So like, if you start giving cooldowns, that's a barrier or a frustration that you're introducing.
That's true.
So it's just about figuring out, like, if it's a requirement though, and like if you've got an arrow or like projectiles in whatever case, and that's super OP, right? That's when you start making the decisions of like, okay, should I limit how many of these things they can have, or should I dumb down like the amount of power that the projectile's got? So now you've got, like, you know, things in your arsenal of solutions that you can really come about with. It's just about figuring out the problem first.
Or keep it the same and increase the number of enemies and have it as more of like a horde game.
Yeah, like a Days Gone or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, instead of nerfing stuff, they were just like, screw it, let's just add more enemies. Which I prefer. I love it when they do that, right? But then there's other times where something in Death's Door or Hyperlight Drifter, where if there's too many enemies on the screen, it just gets so chaotic that it's not really. It's
very chaotic, and
the strategy's gone
to die.
It just becomes luck more than anything.
Rolling and melee and rolling and melee. And do I have enough time to get this?
Sure, and I love that stuff, right? Like, I love Death's Door, I love Hyperlight Drifter, so I'm into that sort of stuff. But then there's other players that prefer the more, I just want to do this one-on-one dance, like Dark Souls, where it's just one enemy on one enemy, enemy versus the player, and you're really like studying all of their moves,
figuring out how to
So it really depends, like, which way you want to lean with that, and if it's your game, Chris. So like, you should go with the game that you like to play. Like, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to just more enemies, or do you prefer like the one-on-one, or do you prefer like something in the middle?
Well, I think that a game like Luigi's Mansion 3 really nailed it, where they had environmental puzzles, they had unique mechanics with the light that you could have, like the lantern thing that could uncover things, and you had the Hoover, which could suck and blow, and then also you had melee as well, and then you had these enemies where they kept evolving and changing and needing different requirements to defeat them.
Okay.
And it was a combination of just in and around the environment, and then sometimes you'd get locked in a room with a bunch of them. But it was only ever like 3 or 4 whenever you got locked into a room. So I'm thinking that's going to be the best way to easily balance the game. So have a combination of open area and then traps, if you will, where you get trapped in the room.
Yeah.
And that can also then lead on to you get trapped into a puzzle area where you have to solve the puzzle before you can get out. And so it's like this labyrinth cave type, labyrinth sort of environment where you're making your way through while leveling up.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, like, for me, it's just about how to simplify all these things down as much as humanly possible. Considering you are a solo dev,
I need to make it simple.
Yeah, this is why I look at things like Death's Door. Like, people complain that there isn't like a leveling system in that game, or there isn't more equipment and stuff like that, but that requires, as you know, like, it requires like a bunch of balance, and every time you introduce a new thing,
and it's got to be balanced from the start to the end of the game. Like, you can't just introduce something and then be like, yeah, this is good. It's like, no, it has to, when do you introduce it? Like, and then the whole game, if it's from the start of the game, the whole game's changed within an instant.
Yeah. And in Death's Door, it's like, that sword is the sword that you get, and that's all you have. That's it. Like, you just...
Wait, no, you can unlock a quicker one and then a heavier one, can't you?
Yeah, so there's... But, like, the actual mechanic of how you use the sword, there isn't, like, a spear that you can get or something, right? Like, they keep it very simplified. Like, there's no leveling system, really. It's just about the equipment that you find and how you level up your health, and the boss. Everything's to do with your ability and, like, your physical ability as a player rather than the ability of the character.
Yeah, and they are actually kind of the same, because when you have the heavy sword, it's slower but more powerful.
Right.
The medium swords have balanced the two, and when you have the quicker sword, it's lighter.
Exactly.
So it takes you the same amount of time to get the same amount of damage, and the same amount of time to finish an enemy off, just with varying numbers of hits.
Yeah. And it's a very elegant solution, as the fact that Death's Door is only made by 2 people, so it's like it makes sense that
it makes sense to have that as a North Star, actually.
Yeah, versus something where they were like, yeah, we're gonna have 15 different weapon types, and we're gonna have like shields, and they're gonna be like the rewards that the player gets. When ultimately it doesn't really change the experience of the game. It's just they're just creating that stuff because they think that players, might want more choice, and it's like, not really. Like, it's very much, for me personally as a gamer, like I'd much prefer to just have the same type of weapon all the way through the game, and just like keep
they want
the
to be
game
delighted, don't they? They want to be delighted and entertained, and having stuff to look through and compare and feel upgrading and feel like they're making progress is one way of doing that. But
absolutely, yeah,
it's got its it's got its downsides, like for a solo dev especially.
Yeah, I think because like when it comes to games development anyway, going from AAA studios to indie, like the biggest difference, that the thing that really makes a difference in terms of like time and energy and effort for like actually making a AAA game is it's purely content. That's all it is. The actual games themselves aren't that difficult to fully create. Like that's obviously an oversimplification. There's obviously weather systems and stuff that AAA games have, obviously, but the actual core gameplay is very achievable by an indie dev. But the actual content of the game is where AAA really shines, and where that comes through, because they can have hundreds of people working on all this sort of stuff. You can have all of these different weapons. You can have all of these different biomes, So, like, once you realize that and recognize that, it's like, okay, like if the actual game itself is just, really simplified down to the point that it's just this core thing, then all this extra fluff around the edges, all this content, for lack of a better term, is just, it's just visual fluff.
Yeah.
While that stuff helps to sell games, like for solo devs and stuff, like once you realize that, and then you look at games like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild versus something like Death's Door, even though they're obviously vastly different games in terms of scope and scale and all that sort of stuff, they fundamentally have the same heart in them, which is like going through different places, solving puzzles, and fighting enemies. You don't really level up. It's action-adventure games. But the simplification of how Death's Door works versus something like a Zelda game is...
Yeah.
Like, the heart is still in the Death's Door game, in my opinion. And it's just about how you can strip all that stuff away and really get to the core of it and be able to make that as a solo dev,
Yeah. And they were sort of incorporating elements of difficulty as well. So one of their pillars is, like, the difficulty curve is plotted out on a graph, and they know exactly what's on either side of them.
Yeah.
And they threaded that needle with how much difficulty they wanted that game to be.
Absolutely.
To me, it was slightly too difficult in terms of it impeding enjoyment, and I put it down for there was one right at the beginning. It took me a while. It wasn't until you kept badgering me and going on about it and talking about it and saying about all the different cool stuff about it. I was like, oh, okay, God, I'm gonna have to churn through this and get it done. And then it wasn't until I was on like the third biome where I just felt powerful. I was like, oh my God, I'm going on to the third biome. I am a boss. Like, I'm getting it now. And it's like, okay, yes, this is what they were going for. It's that feeling of being powerful. So, yeah,
it's the Souls mentality.
It's the Souls mentality, exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's why I had such a good time at Death's Door, because I think that was the game I played right after putting like 80 hours into Elden Ring, right? So I came off that game and then went into Death's Door, and it was like, this is a kid's game, this is the breeze, I can play this, is super easy. But like if it was 6 months after Elden Ring, I might have like returned back to my, the AAA handholdy sort of style thing. Where some people are really sick of that, and I'm absolutely one of those gamers. I guess like it's sort of like over the as the years go by, I get really sick of hand holding. I'm like the older I get, the more wary I get of it. So something like Death's Door, which is all cutesy and Studio Ghibli inspired and is very Zelda-y and stuff, and then you get this boss which just wipes the floor with you, and you just like, this is what I want. Like, these are the sorts of games I want to play.
You got to figure it out. You got to learn its moves. You got to learn when it's going to attack. yeah, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. Like in terms of combat, like for the type of enemies you want to do, I'd say first and foremost, just get the enemy moving around, and then you can really start to figure out those solutions. How simple you want to keep it. Because if you find the combat that's just fun, then you might not have to introduce any of these additional things, you know?
Yeah.
Because that stuff could just get in the way. And if you make a decision now and then you find that the combat's fun, then you're just restricting your own game when it doesn't really
need to be. That's true. Yeah. So I definitely want to hit those core pillars. I want to get melee, and I want to get... Well, actually, do I need to get melee? That's an interesting question. Is it just going to be 100% ranged and it's just dodging and lantern?
Well, I would say why not have both, right? Like you would have one enemy which is ranged only, and then you'll have another enemy which is melee only. And you'd have another one which maybe has two, and then you put all three of those into the same biome, and you're like, okay, how the hell am I going to handle this? Okay, take the ranged guy out first. Okay, dodge this guy, take out the secondary. Like that can do both because he's being a bit of a pest. And then I finally got this melee guy, and I have to like maybe he's filled with armor, and I can't actually hit him, and I have to knock him off. The only way I can knock him off is by using my lantern, and I have to lure him to the edge of a cliff, and just like that dance is what you're looking for. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because maybe only the lantern can give knockback or something.
Right. Or like a specific color gives knockback, or maybe the melee guy's got a huge shield, and on the front of the shield is a specific color that you have to like elementally oppose with the type of light that you got, right? Yeah. So much you can play with. So much.
Yeah. And I was thinking of environmental stuff as well, like fountains could be activated and splash enemies and stuff if you've got like a blue filter, or like bonfires could spit out fire if you shine it with red.
Yeah, and the opposite effects as well, right? Like if you're fighting a water enemy and a fire enemy that have been put into the same area, you're like, okay, activate the fountain to sort of weaken the the fire dude, but inadvertently like you make the water enemy twice as strong, and he just starts bulldozing after you. Like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have activated that yet by accident.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I like that. Yeah, or like if you've got a ranged enemy as well that shoots fire arrows, and you're standing in between its path and the bonfire, you can inadvertently get the enemy to activate other enemies.
That's why it's so important to make everything as systemic as humanly possible, is to create those moments. And the only way you can do that is if you program it systemically rather than having set moments, you know. Yeah.
To let it happen naturally. Oh, that's a lot of ideas. That's kind of cool. Yeah. So get the enemy, make them do everything the player can do.
Yeah.
So like roll, melee, ranged, one of each.
Yeah, and then you could turn off like individual, like each enemy could have like, okay, you can't dodge roll and you're half the speed, but you're twice as powerful. And because you've set all these things up, like it's super easy to do because all you're doing is just changing numbers and your inspector,
turning things off.
That's all you do. Yeah. So it'd be super easy to do, and then just make one pink, one red, one blue, and then just throw them all into a room. Like, all right, see if I can kill these guys, and how annoying it is, or whatever. But yeah, that's exactly how I would approach it. And
then you're balancing. Then the work is balancing what you can do to defeat them and create interesting moments.
Because if you can get that feeling good, you know, like if you can get a few enemies, like make 3 enemies, make that your goal. Get 3 enemies in the game. All doing different things, different speeds, different, power levels, whatever, doing specifically different stuff. And then get your character moving in the way that you want them to move, dodge rolling, all that sort of stuff if you've got blockage in the game, or if you're just having it a dodge roll on the game, that sort of stuff. Are you having a lock-on system? These are the sorts of things that you really want to play with. Like, as you hit the enemy, do you want to have like a freeze frame so it really feels like crunchy, like when you hit them? These are little micro details that you should get into in your prototyping stage. And once you've got that, then you can really start to think about like, okay, this slow guy that's just walking at me really slowly, and I'm just like, okay, I can only hit him from behind, and he's slow to turn around. I've got to dodge roll around him to like hit him in the back. Stuff like that. Maybe he's got a huge hammer and he just slams the floor. All this sort of stuff. Like, you can do all of this in Grey Box without any visuals whatsoever. And if you can get it just feeling good, like, then you're in the best spot ever, because then you're just figuring out how the visuals look rather than about thinking about how to add new abilities to make it fun. So like, just get it playing fun as simple as possible, basically.
Yeah, get all the abilities done. Yeah.
Then you can make a decision if you do need additional weapons, if you do need, checkpoints that are 5 minutes away or 10 minutes away. Like these are the sorts of questions. Like how many enemies can be in one room? Because it feels really great with 3 characters. Like what happens when I add 10? Does it ruin it? If so, how do I balance that? It's just
how much life do I have? Like how many hits do I have? Exactly. How much hits does each enemy have?
Do the enemies drop health? Like these are the sorts of things that it'll be really interesting to see, like once you get a combat system. So because the puzzles, I think for the most part, like you understand what those are going to be. Not all of them, obviously, but you understand the fundamental core mechanics of using the light in specific ways, and those are a lot less hard to program than actiony combat systems, which are a lot more difficult. But
true. And I've done a lot of puzzles. I've done a lot of environmental puzzles with Focus Find.
Yeah.
So I feel a bit more confident going into that. And combat is the thing that I've not done before.
Yeah, have fun with it. It is a lot of fun. That's the thing I will say. Like people say, "Oh, I hate writing combat systems." I love it. I think it's awesome. I have a lot of fun doing it because it's just this song and dance that you're playing. Like you're almost playing against yourself because you're the one programming the stuff, and trying to figure that out.
So it's like a dance, or it's like cooking.
Yeah,
you're throwing things together, making a recipe. You're like finding out what the recipe is rather than following a recipe or baking or something.
Yeah, and you'll do it in stages as well. Like first you'll get your little zombie guy like following the player around, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you're stopping every now and then to like watch where he's turning, and then you just layer it up. Now you're like, okay, if player is this close to enemy, then enemy like swings its sword.
Yeah.
If contact hits on like the little box like collider that you've got on the enemy's sword that hits the player, like how much damage does the player take? All this sort of stuff. Like those are the simple systems. But then once you start really playing with the tools and getting that stuff in the inspector to really tweak and play around with, and start adding other enemies just based off that original prefab of your enemy, then you can really start to get a good feel for it.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, build it up. Like just get it to the point where like I can run around and dodge roll around this enemy and kill him. Then once you got that, then you're pretty much halfway there.
I'll need to download a roll, I think. I don't think my little robot character has a roll yet. So I'll have to download that. Or he's got a slide. He could slide for now.
Sure, that works. I mean, maybe he doesn't dodge roll at all. Maybe it's always a slide. Doesn't have to be either, It can be a teleport, it can be a dash, it can be a slide, it can be a roll. It doesn't matter. Like the main point is that the character is moving quickly into a certain direction and out of the way, and the player's got control over that.
Yeah, that's a lot to think about.
Yeah, looking good though, man. Looks cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm liking how the light works with the shadows. I like the shadows and the light. I think it's kind of cool to have. You've said I need to get soft shadows. I'm liking the crispy shadows, but maybe that's just because it's in a really blocky area. So maybe as soon as I get things softer, the softer shadows will look nicer.
Yeah, when everything is like that harsh, like crisp shadow, like everything in the environment, you got like these old ruins and stuff. When you haven't got ambient occlusion and it's all just like hard shadows like that, then it's going to look a bit.
Yeah, it's going to look a bit weird. Probably.
It's going to look fake, basically, and that's the last thing that you want.
And I really like the idea of the enemies like silhouettes on the wall, and you can, it makes them look bigger than they actually are, and they'd be moving and actually making dynamic shapes on the background, and I think that's got a really good visual hook. Like it's doing a lot of work for me, like atmosphere wise.
Yeah, and you'll get all that stuff for free. Like when you get into Engine, you start doing post processes and stuff as well. Anyway, so I wouldn't worry about that stuff too much yet. Like, just get it feeling good. It has to work before it looks pretty. Like, I'll say it a million times.
Yes.
It will never not be true. But
yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
All right, we'll wrap this thing up. We've been going for half an hour, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining us and listening in. If you are interested in Lanternier, then make sure you go and find Chris on social medias at Acrylic Pixel.
Discord.
Yep, and the Discord. There's going to be an acrylic. There is an Acrylic Pixel Discord. Well,
there's an Acrylic Pixel Discord, so find it on the link.
Yeah, we'll probably link that down below, so you'll be able to find it as well. But yeah, make sure you join in with the game so Chris can get all the help that he needs. Like you said, you are creating a
and if anyone wants to like help make it,
sure,
let me know as well.
All right. Anything else before we close out?
No, where can we find your stuff?
Yeah, you can find me at Hillfort Games on social media, TikTok, Twitter, or what was Twitter is now the dumpster fire that is X. Instagram, Threads, all that sort of good stuff. You can find me on there. I'm making a game called Long Gone. You can wishlist that on Steam. It's a little pixel art zombie game. I'm having a lot of fun with it. People are connecting with it, so I'm going to keep making it. That's the deal. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Until next time.
Next one then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Da-da-da.